Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today we're back with the strategy talk, and this time I'm going to be talking about a strategy that lost a lot of its popularity in very recent times. In fact, the strategy is a modern one. They gained a lot of traction like 1 or 2 years ago and has now lost a lot of that traction and is now considered a pretty suboptimal strategy. The strategy I'm talking about is of course the 2 militia drush, which usually happen post-feudal age, also known as the French drush. And in this video I'm going to talk about why the strategy became good and meta in the first place and what happened to it. Why do we not see it as much anymore? Why are pros steering away from it? And why it's just not gaining the results that it once did, from KOTD4 being played in pretty much every single game, or in most of the later rounds at the very least, to now barely seeing any play in tournaments. I also want to quickly shout out the Reddit community for the Age of Empires 2 subreddits for getting a lot of discussion around my last strategy video where I talked about the spear skirm rush. You guys had a lot of good things to say, and because of all the discussion that was sparked there, I came up with 2 new topics for videos. This one is one of them, so I just want to say a big thank you to you guys. I am reading Reddit pretty consistently, and I love the kind of community discussions that spark. It's all very respectful and it's all very interesting, to say the least here. And yeah, I love that. So let's keep that going, and I'm going to be talking about something completely different in this video. Let's hop into the meat and potatoes now. Okay, I don't know why I said that, but we're going to roll with it. Anyways, let's talk about why the 2 militia drush rose in popularity to begin. So as you already have known, around KOTD4 time, a little bit earlier, 2 militia drush became a popular thing, mostly popularized by the French players Sato, Margou. Those are the 2 strongest French players. And although they weren't the favorites to win the tournament, they were the ones really pushing the strategy forward. And Winchester, who did manage to get to the finals of KOTD4, was also adopting the strategy heavily. The idea behind the strategy was that the fast aggression they were able to get at a low investment was too good to pass up. It was exactly what players were looking for, to put pressure on their opponent, gain the initiative, but not fall too far behind and not be forced to deal damage. Let me give you another option for early initiative, and that is the meta arm rush. And this strategy was not very popular back then because if you go 3 militia plus meta arm upgrade, it was considered way too expensive, and the fast archers was already known about back then, and the fast archers completely dominated that meta arm strategy, and so players just didn't want to go for that. They want to go for a strategy that basically loses them the game unless they catch their opponent off guard, and in a tournament no one's getting caught off guard in the later stages. And so instead of going for the meta arm rush that was considered a little too big of an investment, we instead went for the fast aggression 2 militia drush after feudal age. So you make the militia on the way up and you don't delay your range because it's not a big investment. You don't delay your uptime since again it's just 2 militia, and so you still play a regular archer skirm play, but you have those 2 militia attacking your opponent. And that is a really powerful idea. And because it's so low investment, you don't actually have to kill any villages of your opponent, forcing him to quick wall, forcing him to stay in his base, not be able to fully wall his map, forcing him to take some awkward trades against your militia, weakening some villas, pushing them off certain resources. These things were all considered small wins that we're looking for when going for the 2 militia drush. It also makes sure that we know exactly what he's going to do. Since we're attacking, we're actively scouting his base, so there's going to be no surprises. We go 2 militia, small investment, see everything he's doing, put the pressure on him and force him to react. If he makes a mistake, he's double screwed. If he doesn't make a mistake, we're chilling. We have the information and it's all good to go. On top of that though, on top of already it being a pretty good strategy, players just simply weren't used to dealing with it since it was relatively new at the time, and so they overreacted. We saw players walling in their entire map in a really tight area just to not have to deal with the militia. We saw people small walling every resource, which is like 50 wooden palisade, and we saw people even making all kinds of weird decisions just to not have to deal with those militia and not have to fight them with villagers. And they also didn't know if it was just 2 militia, if it was men at arms, if it's 3 militia. There was so much uncertainty in the air that weird things just kept happening. Players just didn't know exactly the right response, and so they kept making mistakes into the strategy. Okay, so now that we talked about how, it came into favor and some of its strengths, why is it now falling off? Like, if you think about it, a lot of the things I mentioned still seem like the ideal way to play at least most Arabia games these days. Like, there's no reason, at least on the surface level, for the strategy to fall off like it did. It still seems like it's a good way to get fast aggression, still seems like it's a low investment strategy that has a lot of potential and can force mistakes, but there's a few key things, one especially very key thing, that completely destroys this strategy. I'm going to start with that one thing because it's really at the core of what completely shuts down the strategy, and it's so obvious. I'm sure if you pause the video and think for a second, you can come up with exactly why the strategy is now very hard to make work. And that is just a simple defensive tool. You make a barracks on defense, and then you're going to go ahead and make a range or a stable or anything. It doesn't matter. The barracks is what we need to defend the strategy. We don't make 2 defensive militia to combat it. We instead make a singular spearman. This single spearman and this simple concept of making a defensive spear against the 2 militia drush is rather recent. And although people might have been doing it before, now everyone knows how to do it or to do this at the high level. And it's so insane. The one spear, because it moves faster than militia, can often hit the militia and run away, so forcing, the militia to either choose between attacking vills or targeting the spear, and it gets really awkward. And the singular spearman also prevents the scout from engaging with the militia. If the militia are trying to engage vills, the spear is there. If they attack the spear, you run away. If they attack the vills, you hit with the spear and the vills. If they try to chase your low HP vill with the scout, your spear's right there to defend it. You got your scout there as well that can help out on defense, but it's really the spear that completely carries the fight. And so no matter which way you spin it, the 2 militia and the 1 scout are literally completely useless against that 1 spear as long as the spearman is well positioned on defense. It's got to be in between the militia and the scout. It's got to be next to your vills, so if there's any engagements, the spear's right there. And the spear does 3 damage to the militia, so it hurts pretty hard. It also can chase the militia down, so low HP militia will get chased down. And if you have your spear and your scout and a couple of vills, that's way stronger than 2 militia and a scout. And so because of this new concept, and again, rather simple concept, now players aren't walling their resources anymore against the 2 militia Josh. They say, yeah, come attack me. They might wall one side, the closer side to the opponents, but most of the resources still keep them exposed. And they say, come attack my vills. I got my spear ready. I'm going to make my range right away, and I'm going to reset the situation back to neutral. Your militia can't do anything. You spent 160 resources. I'm spending 60 resources on my spearman, and I have 100 resources as an advantage. Also, you spend gold on the militia. That means you cannot get fletching without making a mining camp on the gold. So if I go spearman into skirmisher, which is a really popular strategy right now, I can get fletching and you have to mine gold before you can make fletching. So all of a sudden, he can go militia into archer skirm, but he had to make a mining camp. I go spear skirm on defense, I clear the militia as I mentioned, and then bam, I don't have to make the mining camp. I go straight for the blacksmith, straight for fletching, and I'm winning every single exchange. I'm up 100 resources from the militia the spearman engage, then I'm up that next 100 resources from the mining camp, and the snowball starts from there. That is right away a complete shutdown of this 2 militia strategy. And even just for argument's sake, if you're not going for the spear skirm strategy, not like everyone is going for that, just the 1 spear to hold and then going for archers yourself, you're still up a lot of resources. 1 spear to hold going to scouts, you're still up a lot of resources. The militia, you can just run around them with the scouts. You don't have to worry about them. You counterattack really hard. You're completely fine. The 1 spearman completely shuts down that strategy. And now that players have discovered that, it is completely over for the 2 militia drush. All right, so in conclusion, where do we go from here? What is the strategy gonna go? Like, is it still gonna be popular in some cases? Is it still viable to surprise your opponent? And the answer is, it's not going anywhere. The strategy will always be relevant in some way. If your opponent is maybe not planning to go for a barracks, they're going for like a water play, 2 militia drush all of a sudden becomes very solid because then they need to react, go for the barracks, then go for the spear. If they're caught off guard with it, the 2 militia still has a lot of pros, a lot of good things about it. And so the strategy will always be there in the back of players' minds, and in the right situation can be very strong. It could also be used to confuse your opponents, and when they think that the strategy is not being played, you can then play it as some sort of like anti-meta, catch your opponent off guard with it, and if they're not ready with the spearman, they're not scouting it, then they could get caught off guard and the militia can do some damage. 2 militia, 1 scout, you can easily kill a villager, and then even if the spearman comes after that, you're cool. You got some damage and you're completely fine. This brings us in a much bigger topic, which is what I consider like a circular meta, where things come and old strategies can resurface with a modern spin and can counter some of the recent strategies that we saw. This concept is always happening in pro play. Old strategies are always kept with the pros, that's why experience matters, and they're brought back at the right time to counter some of the modern strategies. Let me give you an example. Scout rushing with full walls right away was considered a pretty solid way to play when you have a good map. And back in the day, you went like 22 pop. And nowadays, everyone goes 20 pop. But if you go 22 pop and you full wall your base, you get a better economy. And so if you have a good map and the situation is right, going for a 22 pop scout rush or a 21 pop scout rush, although not a modern strategy, can be the best strategy since you have a better economy. And that is something that pro players are always thinking about. And it's just when the time is right that these strategies come up. And so the circular meta where new strategies come in, they kick out like the strategies that were there, then the strategies that were there go back and they maybe resurface a year later. And it's a super cool dynamic where there's always something new coming up and always something new to challenge that something new that was already established. And it's a really cool kind of like mind game almost that is always present in high level Age of Empires. And the last thing I'll talk about when it comes to strategies and the meta, what is considered the effective strategy, is that remember the players are the key here, because if the players know about a strategy, if the players expect a strategy, that strategy becomes worse. Simple as that. If you know what your opponent's going to do, it's going to be a lot easier to stop it. So the element of surprise, bringing something different to the table, will always have a lot of value, and that is the core reason as to why strategies come and go from the meta. And this is why these videos are always helpful to let us know where we're at right now and what's currently hot and what's the next big thing that's coming our way. And that's why we all love Age of Empires 2. It's such an in-depth game that leads to these crazy situations. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed it. And as always, have a nice day, stay safe, and peace.